Hello, my name's Stephen Fields, and I'm the Communications Coordinator at the Windsor Essex Catholic District School Board. And all throughout the month of February for Black History Month, we've been focusing our attention on people who have either graduated from our system or work with our system or maybe community leaders and are doing everything that they can do to promote a greater sense of equity and unity in our community and around the world. And today we have with us Arjei Franklin, who is a Windsor Police Services Constable, spent about 7 years in the CFL playing for both Winnipeg and for Calgary, and also played at the University of Windsor. So thanks for being with us here today, Arjei.
Thanks, Stephen, for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your background prior to, obviously your arrival at the University of Windsor, and where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Toronto, Scarborough to be more specific. Grew up, in a standard family. My parents, they actually came from the Caribbean back in the 70s and made a life for themselves in Toronto. And I have three older sisters. I'm the youngest of four kids to my parents, the only boy. And we also grew up in a very spiritual oriented family. We went to church every weekend, and our faith was a very important part of our family. But we were all very close, and our parents did an amazing job raising us. And even now as adults, we all have a very strong bond with our parents, and even as siblings, we're all very close.
Nice, good to hear. So, what was the community like that you grew up in? Was it fairly diverse?
Yeah, it was fairly diverse. At school, there was, a mix of so many different cultures, and it was very diverse. People from all over the place. Toronto is a very diverse city to begin with, and my church community as well was diverse. There was a very large Black population within our church, so I had an opportunity to be exposed to my culture as well as just so many different cultures, which is the beauty of Canada, in my opinion. There is so many different cultures, and as kids in elementary school, we didn't think anything of it. Being from different parts of the world, and all of us just being within the same class, there was nothing special about it or nothing different about it. We thought it was just normal, and we accepted each other for our differences, and it was a great experience personally when I think back on my childhood growing up in Toronto and the different cultures, and also establishing a pride for my culture as being a Black person as well. I was surrounded by many very successful Black people within my church community, and that made a huge impact on myself. And my parents were probably our greatest example of what it meant to work hard and to strive to be the best that you can be.
So you graduated from the University of Windsor, and then you get drafted by was it Calgary or Winnipeg get drafted?
I got drafted by Winnipeg.
So you go off and you have your playing career, and how did you eventually make your way back here to Windsor?
Well, it kind of starts before I got drafted. I met my wife, Afia, who graduated from Brennan, actually. We met each other in my third year, her second year of human kinetics at the University of Windsor. And our relationship blossomed, and eventually we got married. And Afia being from Windsor, we always kind of felt Windsor was a great place. I made a lot of good connections, and Afia's family was here. And we sort of decided to set up shop. So even when I was going off out west to play football during the season, we had our home base here in Windsor. So it was always our plan to, when I was done playing football, we would just be in Windsor full time.
So eventually you got a job with the Windsor Police Service. How long have you been with them now?
I've been with the Windsor Police Service for 3 years.
Okay. And in your current role, you're a constable. Just tell us a little about your role there with police.
Sure. So I am a constable with the Windsor Police Service. I am on the front line. I'm patrolling the city and responding to calls for service, and those calls for service there's such a huge range of the different calls for service that we deal with. For the past 2 years, I've been working predominantly in the downtown core. So I've been working with the homeless population a great deal, and there's a lot of struggles there. There's a lot of challenges there, and I've had an opportunity to help them and to serve the businesses in that area as well. So I've learned a whole lot about myself and about the resiliency of people and the challenges that a lot of people are facing as well, and ways that I can help. I've seen firsthand the need of people right here in our city, and I didn't realize that before I came a police officer. Sometimes we think everything's just all great, but if you look a little closer, even just in the heart of our city, there are a lot of challenges and there are a lot of people who are in need. And it was an eye opener for me, and it was also good to see that I don't have to look too far to find someone who I can help. And I think hopefully we can all start to take on the idea of where is there a need in my city to help someone. And it's not hard to find that need and to step up and fill it.
Mm-hmm. And you're in something of a unique position, obviously, as a Black police officer. And we know a lot of things have been said about the police within the last couple of years. A lot of things going on, obviously, with the Black Lives Matter movement. How do you sort of straddle that line? How do you balance those two worlds when there seems to be so much tension and I don't know how do you deal with that?
It is a tough situation. It's a great question. I think back to learning about what happened in Minneapolis with George Floyd and all the emotions that I was dealing with as a Black man and as a police officer. My wife and I, we went for long walks during that time and tried to talk a lot of things out. And there was a lot of emotions that I was feeling with, and I felt as though I did have to straddle this line between these two worlds, myself being a part of the Black community and myself being a part of being a police officer. And then I came to the realization that I did not have to do that. I had to see myself as someone who stood on the side of right versus wrong. So it doesn't really matter what I look like or what my job is. I look at what is happening in this world and I can decide, is this good? Is this right? Is this a good thing for our community or our society? And if it is, then I'm for it. And on the other hand, is this bad? Is this what happening is wrong? And if it is wrong and I determine that that's not right, then I'm not for it. So I've kind of made my distinction with just between right and wrong and good and evil. And when you do that, it doesn't matter what you look like. Everyone can side on the side of right and the side of good and just and compassion and caring. And that's where I come from now. So I'm not as concerned about being a Black police officer or being a part of the Black community. I look at things for what they are and I decide, is this a good thing for people? And if I believe it is, then I'm for it.
It's an interesting perspective. So I want to go back and talk about something that you touched on earlier, and that was you mentioned about having a lot of role models when you're growing up as a young man, people in your church community. A lot of the people that we've talked to for this series of interviews have indicated that they, especially when they're going up through school, there weren't a lot of people that looked like them. And they didn't necessarily have a lot of Black role models. Talk a little bit about your role models, and the influence that they had on you, but also your opportunity now as a police officer to be that guy, to be that role model.
Sure, yeah, that's great. When I start and think about role models in my life as a young person, my mom and my dad, they're at the front of the line. They came from a very small island called Anguilla in the 70s, and they traveled here with just the clothes in their bag, basically, had nothing else. And, after 40 years, my father retired as a deputy chief building inspector for the city of Toronto. My mother retired as a manager in nursing, and she worked for the Ontario Nurses Association as well. Along the way, they had a lot of challenges. My mom faced discrimination in the workplace as well. And they persevered and rose above it and made an amazing life for myself and my three older sisters, and they are truly the greatest role model that I have in terms of striving for excellence. As a kid, Martin Luther King Jr. was a huge role model for me as well. I remember I did speech arts as a kid, and I remember almost memorizing his whole "I Have a Dream" speech and reciting that. And there was a lot of examples of Black excellence in my community growing up. I know I had teachers in grade 3 who, I had a Black teacher in grade 3 who who really just showed us that, you can be a Black person and be in, be an educator, or be in politics, for example, or be a police officer or a nurse or a doctor. There were examples of that all around me. And a lot of that came from my church community as well. So for me, seeing that, I always kind of internalized it and said, I can do those exact same things. And it was great for me to be able to see those examples growing up. And that made a huge impact on my life. And now here I am. I was a professional football player. And, one thing that we didn't mention, I have a teaching degree. I taught for 4 years in a Christian private school between football and policing. And now here I am as a police officer in a role of leadership within my community. And as a Black man, I don't take that lightly. I understand that there are other people who are looking at me now, and they, in their mind, can make a decision that, hey, I can do that too when I get older. And I am honored to take on that responsibility and hopefully maybe be a role model to some of the young people in our community. I don't take that responsibility lightly. And, I try to make myself available to communicate and mentor young people, when possible. And then I think about myself as a father. I have 2 young sons, and they are, amazing, and they are my priority to raise them up to be positive contributors to society, which is something that my father always told me. If it was Christmas and we asked him what he wanted for Christmas, he would always say, I just want my kids to be positive contributors to society. That was his line. And we roll our eyes when he would say it, but I get it now. I get it. And I am hopefully one of those positive contributors to society, and I hope that the same for my kids, and I know my wife is. And hopefully anyone that I can mentor and talk to and maybe influence, I hope that they take on that same goal to become a positive contributor to society.
Yeah. Well, I don't doubt that you are, and I know when I Googled you, I was just doing a little bit of background research on you and came across an article where you spoke about what we were talking about earlier about race relations and the situation with police, where you had I think you talked to CBC about a social media post where you had the opportunity to use your voice to try to find something positive in that whole situation and state kind of what your opinion was on that whole case.
Yeah, it was a difficult time, like I mentioned earlier. And like I said, I had a whole lot of emotion within me, and I was angry and I was sad. And one thing that I didn't do was take to social media right away, not with all those emotions, not before I could start to process them. Because, you realize now in today's day and age, once you push post or hit send, then it's there forever and you no longer have any control over it. So, I remember I talked with a lot of my colleagues and my parents, and my wife and we talked, and I had an opportunity to really kind of sort through everything I was feeling. And then I remember just saying, okay, I feel like I'm prepared to start to write something. And it kind of just flowed out. And when I did send it, I felt a weight off my shoulders, because I knew that I could not just remain silent. I knew that my community was looking at me as a Black man and as a police officer. Those closest to me I felt like they were looking at me to say, where's your stance on this? And I think within the Black community, I know that a frustrating thing is when something like this happens, a lot of police officers may be silent about it. And it's frustrating because, they're hoping that the police officers they know will be able to express that what happened was wrong. And here I am as a police officer in that situation, and I'm now the one that I think others are looking to speak up and say what happened was wrong, especially with regards to the George Floyd incident and and many other incidents that's happened in the States and even here in Canada. So when I sent it, I was proud of myself for finally making a stand and declaring how I viewed it and where I was. But it wasn't an easy thing to do. I was kind of concerned, and in my post I expressed a lot of what I was concerned about, and I was just very open about everything that I was feeling. But the amazing thing was my colleagues within the police service showed me nothing but support, and that was great. I was concerned that maybe they may have taken offense to speaking against police, well, so, an action that a police officer took in general. But my colleagues, they reached out to me in so many different ways, called me, responded to my post, shared my post. When I saw them at work, they took me aside and commended me for what I said, and advised and told me that they stood with me. And it was amazing. And I realized how tight a group the Windsor Police Service was, how they support their members, and that they also stand on the side of right versus wrong. And it was a great moment in a very dark time for myself.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely something cathartic about getting that off your chest, right? But obviously risks associated with it too. But when when you take a look around at the current state of race relations, just talk about that a little bit. And in our own community, and then what you see on kind of more of a national, maybe international level. What troubles you about what you've seen just over the last few years, and what gives you hope?
Well, yeah, I've been troubled with what I've seen, and at times I guess what I wonder sometimes is there appears to be a difference with the way minorities are treated in our society. Whether it's in the healthcare system or through law enforcement or through the judicial system or in education, it seems as though at times visible minorities are treated not with the same care and not with the same, compassion as the white population, I guess I would say. And it's concerning, and when I look at my two sons who are growing up, I want them to grow up in a society where they are treated equally and fairly and given the same opportunities and shown the same compassion and patience as anybody else, But what I do realize is that we oftentimes focus on the negative, and when you look at the media and you follow the media, and even with the current pandemic, everything, when if I hit my news app on my phone, it's bombarded with negativity and the race relations and the turmoil and the racial tension or the current pandemic. And if you always focus on that, you could think that the world is just completely 100% negative. And it's the conversations that I've had, conversations like this, or conversations that I've had with my colleagues who don't look like me, who have a very different background than I do, very different experiences. And we have these talks, and we're very candid about our stance, and it's a safe place to have these discussions. And I realize that we are very much alike, and we both want the same things for our community. We both want the same type of community for our children, and we may have some differing opinions, but we can have good conversations and share a little bit about ourselves with each other. And we come out of those conversations just a little bit more enlightened to how other people see the world. And that's what brings me hope. If I focus on the negativity always, it can become very depressing. And I think it's important that we don't let that happen. It's important not to ignore the challenges that we're faced with, because I think that's something that we might want to do as well, is say, let's just stop talking about racism. And I don't think that's the solution. We can't just sweep it under the rug. We do have to be willing to share and talk about it. And at the same time, it has to be in a safe place where we're not being defensive or we're not being accusatory in those conversations. But it's an opportunity for us to share our experiences and share our perspective on things. And from those conversations, one-on-one with someone else that has a very different life than I do, we can understand each other a little bit better. And that's what brings me hope. I've had some great conversations over this time. And with all the racial unrest that's happened, one of the things that it has caused us to have these conversations, it sparked a need to discuss what's been happening in this world. And that's probably one of the best things that has happened, is that now people are starting to talk about it. And from those discussions, I feel like we can make huge headway in this struggle to have equality in our society, which has been a struggle for centuries, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great answer. Final question, Arjei. What does Black History Month mean to you on a personal level?
It's special, you know, and I think it's an opportunity for me, especially as a kid, to see the success and the accomplishments of Black people celebrated. And I internalized that, and I saw that, and I often thought to myself, I can be that person, whether it was through sports, and you know, sports was a big part of my life for a very long time, but also just in leadership within our community. Like, Black people can be leaders, and when I would learn about them through Black History Month, I viewed myself as a potential leader, and I viewed myself as a leader in my class. And it was this emphasis on the successes of Black people that really did build up my perspective and my potential as a young person, and what I could see myself doing going forward. And that's so important for a young person. They have to be able to see themselves with the potential to do great things. If they don't even see it, if they don't see that as a possibility, then really, how can you strive for anything if you don't realize that you have the ability to do great things in your life? And Black History Month was that for me. And you know, now this generation, my generation, and the young people, we're going to be creating our own Black history. You know, and it might be on a smaller scale. It might not be what Martin Luther King Jr. did, but every interaction that we have with someone, we have an opportunity to make an impact, a positive one. And I see that for myself, and I know I've got a lot of peers who, you know, we played football together, we went to school together, we're colleagues now in the Windsor Police Service, and we all have an opportunity to make an impact in our community. And someone can see us do it and say, that was a successful Black man or Black woman who did some great things, and I'm going to remember them, and I'm going to strive to do something like what they've done. And I know that's what Black history did for me.
Great answer. Arjei, thanks so much for taking some time out to be with us here today. Really enlightening conversation, and continued good luck to you. Keep up the great work. I'm sure you've done a lot of really good, meaningful stuff for our community. So thanks for that.
Thank you very much, Stephen. It was my pleasure. Have a great day.